Good day, I'm James Carter, and this is U.S. News Daily. Thank you for joining us. Today, we bring you trusted reporting, expert analysis, and the top stories shaping America and the world as they unfold. Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom take part in a classic game of phone tag. You know, the kind where one person blatantly lies about calling the other. This is just another day. Not long ago, Los Angeles was pretty much known for three things: palm tree-lined streets, show business, and performers who were, let's call it, show business adjacent. But over the last few days, there's been an addition to that list.
Some 4,000 National Guard troops are in Los Angeles now. At least 500 Marines have arrived. Last night, 113 people were arrested by local authorities, most for failure to disperse. This on top of weekend fires and vandalism. Federal immigration raids, which sparked protests and spasms of violence, will continue for at least a month in Los Angeles, authorities have said.
Well, look, if you have to create civil unrest by violently targeting immigrants and denying them due process, you can't beat the summer in LA. Now, one of the biggest issues surrounding Donald Trump's completely unnecessary and provocative escalation involving America's military is the fact that apparently he never consulted the governor of California. I mean, for a guy who loves states' rights almost as much as Matt Gaetz loves going to high school parties, it's a bit perplexing.
Well, under his executive order, it specifically notes, and under what the DOD did, is they had to coordinate with the governor of the state. They never coordinate with the governor of the state.
But I know you talked privately. Have you spoken in the last couple of days to the president about any of this?
Yeah, we talked for almost 20 minutes, and this issue never came up.
Come on, Governor. Maybe Trump just got a little shy. You know how he hates the sound of his own voice. But since that benign phone call on Friday, Donald Trump has circumvented Gavin Newsom's authority and federalized the National Guard, as well as sending in the Marines to Los Angeles. And this action by Trump isn't just at odds with the past 60 years of presidential norms, it's also at odds with Donald Trump.
We have laws. We have to go by the laws. We can't move in the National Guard. I can call insurrection, but there's no reason to ever do that, even in a Portland case. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor.
Yes, back in 2020, somewhere between the world still adjusting to working in our underwear over Zoom and the president telling us that a vial of Clorox could cure all our COVID woes, he went on TV and said that he couldn't possibly do the thing that he's doing right now. But as you'd imagine, he has a perfect explanation for all of that.
Why is this situation different to not consult with Governor Newsom about this?
Well, the biggest change from that statement is we have an incompetent governor. So I talked about governors, but I didn't talk about he's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California.
See, it's not blatant hypocrisy because Trump's words only apply to competent governors. It's the same way he'd never stiff competent contractors on their bills and always respects competent election results. And Trump isn't the only one willing to tie themselves in self-proclaimed patriotic knots to justify their about-face on the issue of the National Guard. Here's Kristi Noem back in 2024.
Democrats have been encouraging this president. They've been encouraging President Biden to come after our states' rights. They've been talking about federalizing our National Guard, which would be the first time in American history that we would have a president that would pay soldiers to stand down, to actually not protect America. And if he's willing to do that and to take away my authority as governor, as commander-in-chief of those National Guard, boy, we do have a war on our hands.
That was then South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, back when she was willing to do whatever it took to defend the lives of anyone who wasn't her dog, expressing how terrible it would be for a president to go over her head and federalize the National Guard. And yet now,
I'm incredibly proud of the president for activating the National Guard and for sending in these Marines, because these Marines are specifically trained to meet the need that we have on the ground in LA right now. And Governor Newsom has done a disservice to the state of California for many years. The people there should never elect him into a leadership position ever again.
I didn't know that Kristi Noem was such a great athlete. If she keeps training, I'll bet she could grab gold in the 2020 Olympics for mental gymnastics. And Speaker Mike Johnson must have felt just a little left out today when he heard his friends were being blatant hypocrites, so he wanted to get in on the action. Here he is a few months ago describing those people recently pardoned for their actions on January 6th.
What was made clear all along is that peaceful protests and people who engage in that should never be punished. There was a weaponization of the Justice Department. There was a weaponization of the events.
Is it hypocritical given the president pardoned the violent protesters on January 6th?
Look, no, I think there's a clear distinction between those two. We've seen what's happened in LA in the early 90s and in other times when these things get out of control and they burn whole city blocks down and shut the place down. You have to stay on top of that. You cannot let it get out of control.
Right, because if you let it get out of control, things could get peaceful. It is lie upon lie upon lie to justify everything they do. And not to get all old man here, but back in my day, we used to have a little thing called shame. You see, years ago, politicians used to live in our human world where, when they were caught lying to the American public, they were held to account and would be forced to take part in a now ancient ritual known as apologizing. But those days seem to be long gone, because in our current world, we don't just have a thriving echo chamber filled with rank partisans who laud whatever actions they agree with so that their side is never held to account. We also have seasoned journalists like Fox News' John Roberts willing to do the president's bidding. Let me explain. Today, Tuesday, as the situation in Los Angeles becomes even more tense thanks to the militarization of troops by this president, Donald Trump was asked about the last time that he spoke with Governor Gavin Newsom.
When is the last time you spoke with Governor Newsom?
A day ago. Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job.
Wow, seems like that could have been a quick text, but whatever. And within minutes of that statement, Governor Newsom responded to Trump's claim, tweeting, "There was no call, not even a voicemail." Huh. Well, this is why we have respected journalists like John Roberts from the vaunted Fourth Estate to get to the truth of what really happened between these two government officials.
President Trump contacted me from Air Force One on his way to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where he'll be in just a little while. He said the first call to Gavin Newsom was not picked up. The second call Gavin picked up. We spoke for 16 minutes. I told him to essentially, quote, and this is quoting the president, get his ass in gear and stop the riots, which were out of control more than anything else. This shows what a liar he is. Said I never called. So here is the evidence. And here is the call log that the president sent me from his phone. This was June the 7th. Now, granted, this was on Saturday. So that from the president, which says is proof that he spoke to Gavin Newsom early in the morning, our time, late at night, Friday night, would have been June 6th, I guess, in Los Angeles. So, Governor, over to you for the response.
No, he did respond when he said there was no call, not even a voicemail, because according to Trump's very own call logs, a day ago, June 9th, there was no call, not even a voicemail. It didn't happen. John Roberts knows it didn't happen, by the way, but continues to play dumb on TV in an effort to keep his job on what is now essentially state-run television. And while this phone call might seem like small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, it's just one more instance of right-wing politicians not being held to account for their lies. Why would the President of the United States ever feel the need to own up to anything when just a phone call away is a hack journalist employed by a 24-hour kiss-ass-a-thon willing to peddle lies about another phone call? Thank you for watching U.S. News Daily. I'm James Carter. If you want to stay informed with the latest and most trusted news, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll see you again soon.